Warning, this video may contain content that may not be suitable for children or anyone else that is easily offended. Strong language, graphic content, nudity, bad jokes, and a possible idiot, aka myself, may be featured in the following clip. Viewer discretion is advised. Channel is not responsible for any damages that you receive watching this video.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Zems, and welcome to Top 3 Photos with Disturbing Backstories, Part 18. If you guys haven't already, be sure you swoop down to that description box, click on that link, and go watch the video so the entirety without me pausing and stopping and talking through the whole thing. If you guys don't know who this is by now, then you in the wrong place. I'm gonna try to start interacting to Mrballen at least maybe once a week or once every other 2 weeks to avoid copyright strikes, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, but for now, let's get it.
Today we're going to look at 3 progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them I will share the photo that is famously associated with them. But before we get into today's stories,
if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel, because that's all we do. We upload 3 or 4 times every week.
So if that's of interest to you, please build the like button's confidence way up and tell them to run for student body president. Help them hand out flyers, help them with their speech, and then when the big day comes, don't vote for them. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
Let's get the ball down,
Let's get into today's stories.
Let's go. Surrender. Number 3.
There are 3 waterfalls spanning the Canadian-USA border that combined make up the famous Niagara Falls. They have a max height of about 170 feet at their highest point, and every second, 700,000 gallons of water tumbles over the edge. The rapids above the falls are some of the strongest and most violent in the world, with a max speed of about 40 miles per hour right before you hit the edge. As a result, no one's allowed to boat or swim in the final 3.2 miles of the Niagara River that feeds into the falls. But back in the day, there was no such restriction. On the evening of July 16th, 1853, 3 men were working on a small barge anchored in the Niagara River about a half-mile away from the edge of the falls. Once they were done with work, the way they would get back to shore is by taking a rowboat and taking it downstream to this small island called Goat Island that sits right on the edge of the falls. Now, in order to get to that island, you would have to traverse the rapids. But it was only a couple hundred feet away, and because they worked here all the time, they had traversed the rapids many times before without incident. But this time, as soon as they got in, one of their oars broke. And so they weren't able to control their boat, and very quickly they got dragged into the rapids, started getting spun around, and then it capsized. Although they desperately tried to swim to shore, the rapids were just too strong, and 2 of the men were swept away to their death. But one...
See, this is how it works out. This is where trial and error comes into play. You have to realize some of the stuff that we're using today, how do you think we know that it's effective to human? Like, it kills people, or make you sick, or you'll get poisoned, or it's the most painfulest thing. Somebody had to be the experiment. Somebody had to do it in order for us to know, right? So that's crazy. When it comes to like poison ivy, when it comes to like these rapids and stuff, somebody has to be that person to go be that one and find out and get clapped so that we can know not to do the same thing. It's kind of like your mom told you don't touch the stove. You know what I'm saying? How did you know it was hot? Yes, she told you it was hot, but eventually you end up touching the stove or touching something hot and you found out the hard way. Man, it sucks that they had to go like this, but damn.
One man, Joseph Avery, was lucky enough that when he fell in, he drifted down and grabbed onto this tree root that was sticking out of the water. And so he pulled himself about halfway up out of the water, he caught his breath, and he's looking around and he can't believe he survived, but he wasn't out of the water yet, so to speak, because he was in the middle of these rapids and there was nobody on shore. It was getting late. His 2 buddies have drowned, and when he yelled out, the rapids were so loud nobody could hear him. And the log he was holding onto was totally slick, and so he had to grip it as hard as he could, otherwise he would just slip back into the water.
Muscle.
And so all night, with half of his body in the water, he gripped onto this branch as tight as he could and just prayed he would survive. The next morning, when tourists arrived, they noticed Joseph out on this log, and they waved to him, and Joseph, who had used all his strength just to hold onto this log all night, was not only fatigued, but also was becoming hypothermic, and he very carefully removed one hand and he waved back. The tourists immediately notified authorities, and a rescue effort was launched. And because it was too dangerous to take a boat and try to drive down to Avery and pull him out that way, because he was right near the edge of the falls, what they did is they went up to this little bridge that was upstream of Joseph, and they released rafts and small boats, hoping that one of them, just by chance, would get caught up on that log and he could grab it, and then Joseph could climb in, throw the rope out, and get pulled to shore. But unfortunately, after dozens of attempts, nothing came close to Joseph. Their next plan was to tie a long tether onto one boat and then guide it down the river until it reached Joseph. And this worked. But when Joseph climbed into the boat, it immediately began to capsize. And witnesses would say Joseph stood up, and as he was falling backwards, he threw his hands up in the air like he was surrendering. He let out a final scream and then fell under the turbulent waters. And then seconds later, he was swept off the falls to his death. Here is the final photo of Joseph Avery.
Oh,
it was taken
my
by
God.
a journalist right before that boat with a tether attached to it arrived in front.
This is some scary. This looks fake, right? If no one told you this picture was real, you'll be like, oh, that's fake. That's Photoshop. Somebody took an image. This dude was stuck right here for multiple hours, bro. Oh, he said from night till day to the next day, and then somebody seen him and they called for help. Can you imagine surviving that whole time, waiting to get rescued, and when they finally try to rescue you, they end up killing you? That's some scary stuff right here, man. I'm not gonna go cap. I can't swim. I'm not gonna pretend like I can. I wish I learned how, but I'm from California and we're surrounded by water, but you don't go practicing swimming inside those beaches. I'm telling you that right now. It's probably not the cleanest water out there. Number 2, Facebook post.
Chad Lawhorn woke up in his Nashville home around 3 a.m. on April 8th, 2018. He had taken a long flight back from San Francisco the night before, so his sleep schedule was all messed up. Not feeling very tired, he decided to go downstairs to the kitchen to get a snack. And as he was walking down the stairs, he pulled out his phone and he saw a notification from his Venmo account. His younger brother, Casey, had sent him $250, and attached to it was a single word note. It just said, damages. Knowing his brother had long struggled with his mental health, Chad was concerned he was getting ready to hurt himself, and he had sent him this money as a way to compensate for the emotional toll he was about to inflict on him. Chad didn't even change out of his pajamas. He grabbed his keys, hopped in his car, and began driving the 2 hours to East Ridge, Tennessee, where his younger brother and his mother lived. On the ride there, he called both of them dozens of times, but he never got through. When he finally pulled onto their street, he looked down the road and he saw dozens of police cars and TV crews, and there was yellow crime scene tape all around their property. Chad just stopped the car right in the middle of the road and just stared. And he didn't know how long he was there for, but at some point one of the police officers noticed him and walked up and knocked on his window. And when the officer found out who he was talking to, the news Chad was delivered was far worse than anything he was expecting. 24 hours earlier, Chad's younger brother, Casey, who was 23, was spending the day with one of his very good friends named Avery. They had gone to a comic book store to play Magic the Gathering, and then afterwards they headed back to Casey's house to go to bed. Around 12:30 in the morning, Avery fell asleep on the living room floor, and as Casey was getting ready to go to bed himself, his mother called him and asked if he could come pick her up at the bar. And so Casey begrudgingly agreed to do it. He drove to pick her up, and when he saw her, he could tell she was totally intoxicated. And the entire ride home, she just pleaded with Casey not to hurt himself because it would totally devastate her if he ever did that. Casey hated when she talked to him that way, and apparently she did this all the time. When they got back to the house, Casey dropped his mom off, and then he went up to his bedroom where he retrieved a rifle he had stolen from a friend. And then he paced around his room for a while, getting mentally prepared for what he was about to do. And when he felt ready, he left his room, he went downstairs to the living room where Avery was still asleep on the ground, and he placed the rifle up against the side of his head, and he fired one shot, killing his friend instantly. Once he was dead, Casey went upstairs to his mother's room. When he got to the threshold of her room, he pushed the door open, and it was totally dark, but he could tell his mother was still awake in her bed. He raised his rifle and he fired, except the gun didn't go off. It jammed. His mother, because she was so intoxicated, did not hear the shot ring out, and she didn't really know what her son was doing in the doorway, so she did not raise any alarms. And so Casey just turned around, walked into the hallway where there was light, he fixed the jam in his gun, he turned back around, and this time his mother was now out of bed because the family dog was barking like mad, and so his mother was trying to calm the dog down, and she looked up and saw her son standing in the doorway carrying a gun, and so she just kind of froze and stared at him, and that's when Casey, without any hesitation, raises his rifle and fires 2 shots, and then his gun jams again. Now, neither of those 2 shots were fatal, although one of them did strike her in the arm. And even though she was intoxicated, she was now fully aware her son is trying to kill her. And so she's screaming at him, "Why are you doing this? You're killing me!"
Really?
Casey was totally unfazed. He flipped on the lights, he fixed the jam, he re-aimed at his mother, and his mother, who was still just standing next to the bed, looking at her son, wondering why this was happening, and Casey just aimed and took 2 shots, and these would be fatal.
I'm lost. Is anybody else right now lost in the story? Did I miss something? Did he say something and I'm lost in the sauce? Because right now I'm not understanding what happened. Is he mad that he had to go pick her up from the bar? Or like, I don't understand what's going on right now. Like, why would you kill Avery too? That's messed up, man. See, this make you not even want to sleep at friends' houses anymore. Because he just went over, y'all just got done playing Magic the Gathering and everything was fine. But as soon as his mom started talking to him, he lost his mind. Maybe he finally snapped and he just blacked out and did some stuff. But he reached that point. He had no emotion. He didn't have no regret. He just started shooting. He fixed the jam. Usually you're like, bang, you know what? Oh man, I shouldn't be doing this right now. He cut on the light, fixed it, and shot her 2 more times, went back, fixed and shot her 2. Like, man, I can't believe you can do this to somebody like that, bro. Like, the world is madness, man.
He went downstairs and robbed Avery, and then he hopped in his car and he drove all the way to Mississippi, where within 24 hours he would take his own life. We know all of these details because shortly after he committed these crimes, Casey posted a lengthy confession to Facebook detailing exactly what happened and what he did. This is a screenshot of the actual post. It's extremely graphic and it's since been removed from the social media platform. In his
All right, wait, let me see if I can read it.
post, Casey says he feels extremely bad for his older brother Chad because he knows this is going to be extremely hard for him, and he encourages people to help his brother during this insanely difficult time. While he doesn't provide a specific motive for why he committed these crimes, he does say at the end of his confession that he's been thinking about murder a lot lately and wanted to know how it felt. But after doing it, he says he barely felt anything at all.
Just imagine all the people about to be like, oh, ban Magic the Gathering, it causes people to kill people. Like, yeah, okay, bro. That's why I hate when people like that. They about to try to ban Grand Theft Auto 2 because people are good. Their carjackings went up. What does that have to do with anything, bro? All of a sudden, video games are no, bro. You just have people that don't want to work for nothing and want to take people's stuff. All right, so since many people keep trying to reach out to me on Facebook, I figure I can just say my piece on here and be done with it. Before I start, I need to emphasize that I take full responsibility for my actions. Nothing anyone has ever done to excuse or cause this. My decisions and my failures are on my own. Technical detail. This morning at around 01:30, I shot and killed my mother, the Lawhorn, and my close friend Avery Gaines with a stolen 22, I think it's a long rifle, I don't know. Avery was staying the night to go with me to Epska's Hickson's tonight to play Magic the Gathering like we usually do. He fell asleep on my living room floor around 0:30. The same time I went to pick up my mom from Bud's Sports Bar on Brainerd Road. My mom was completely wasted, and just like every other time she gets drunk, she goes on and on without prompt about how devastated she'd be if I'd killed myself. Once I got her back to our house, I went to my room and grabbed the gun. I nervously paced for a few minutes, playing the coming events out in my head, which were vastly different from what actually happened. I walked up to Avery as he slept and shot him in the head once. He seemed to die instantly. My mom was in her room, disoriented from alcohol, barely registered from that anything happened. I attempted to shoot her in the head, or shoot her in the bed right then, but then the gun jammed. She didn't notice what I just attempted. I left the room and I fixed the jam. When I went back into her room, she was about to get out of bed, trying to calm her dog, Oscar. I rapidly got off 2 shots, but I missed anything vital since there weren't any lights on in her room. I saw 1 inch of room in her left arm. Dang, I'm not sure whether the other one went. She started screaming the worst scream I've ever heard. Movies really don't do justice to how true terror sounds. Bruh, this dude is out of his mind. The fact that he captured everything, detail by detail, he didn't leave anything. What makes it even creepier is that he shot Avery and then made sure he was dead because he said he died instantly. So he looked at him for a second and made sure that he wasn't breathing anymore. The gun jammed up again, so I scrambled to get it fixed. She shouted, "Oh, you shot me. You've killed me. Why?" Once I got the jam fixed, I turned on the light so I wouldn't miss again. I shot her twice more and it was over. I went back to the living room to take the heroin and cash that Avery had on him. Heroin? Wait, what kind of... I don't think they was playing the same Magic the Gathering I'm talking about, bruh. That's not the Magic I was referring to. The hole in his forehead was so small and not a lot of blood had come out of it. However, thick dark blood was pouring out from his nose. Bile came out of his mouth. I was shaking from adrenaline, but I felt nothing other than that, except maybe disgust at the corpse in front of me and the noises it was making. I reached into his pocket to get out his wallet, grabbed what I wanted, and left the house. The whole event took probably 3 or 4 minutes. I hoped both were going to be quick and efficient. I didn't want my mom to suffer, to die in horror, die with the knowledge that her son did it. I didn't hurt her dog or her cat, in case anyone was wondering about the animals. In case anybody was wondering, he's like, you know what? I just killed 2 people, but the animals are fine. Don't worry, Peter. Don't worry. The animals are fine. No one else was hurting in making up this video. People keep saying suicide isn't worth it, it isn't too late, that I should turn on myself instead. Well, friends, it's too late. It has been more than 12 hours now, not to mention I've been suicidal since late high school, and it's my opinion that I must be heading to unavoidable tragedy since I started at MTSU, whatever that is, Mississippi something university, I don't know. I'm not saying the university made me do it, but that chain of events I initiated by going there led me here to inevitable suicide. Let's think critically for a minute, ignoring everything about why I hate myself and why I'm suicidal from before midnight this morning. Just looking at today's events, how should I be expected to not kill myself? Surely any normal person would wish death on themselves after doing what I did, seeing what I saw, and hearing what I heard. And all that's waiting on me in his life in prison or maybe death penalty. If I would get the death penalty, then I should definitely kill myself. Otherwise, I'm just wasting tax dollars on lengthy legal processes. Even without being executed, just wasting away in prison sounds awful, and also a horrible use of state money. And who would look forward to life in prison? I'm almost 24. That's a crazy amount of time behind bars, and it would be so lonely. I'm sure most of my friends would want to visit me at least once, if for no other reason than to try to understand what I did. But after this, that first year, I can't imagine I'd have any weekly visitors, not even family, or perhaps especially not family. And I'm not trying to say people don't care about me. I know a lot of you do. It's just that people in general do not keep up at a habit of going to visit a friend in prison. That's true. Life carries on for everyone else, and the sooner this is all over, the sooner everyone can move on. If I'm dead by the time you're reading this, you can heal faster than if I'm still around in court and prison. Don't give me or my family your thoughts and prayers. No one will be hurt by this more than my brother, Chad Lawhorn. He would probably need a lot of help getting through this, and if you think you're helping him by just talking to this guy, you're effing wrong. If you want to help him in this insanely difficult time I'm putting him through, actually do something. Don't just think about it. I'm sorry to him more than anyone. That said, I don't want to need forgiveness from anyone. What I did is unforgivable, and prayers is a waste of time. Nothing happens after death, but if there's a hell, I'm going to be in the lake of ice at the bottom. Betrayal of family and betrayal of guests are two of the worst sins. However, as I sit here in the Mississippi writing this on the side of the I-59 South after my car broke down, what I look forward to is nothingness after death. I spent a lot of time thinking about murder, wondering what it feels like, but I barely felt anything. I mean, I'll call a cap on that. You did feel something, because right there, he said I barely felt anything, and right here, you did say you felt. He said no one will be more hurt than my brother Chad. He'll probably need a lot of this. He's thinking about helping him. So he did have some kind of regret. I just didn't think he didn't want to display it, but he did have some kind of remorse. Why he decided to kill those two? Why Avery had heroin in his pocket? I think a lot of factors plays into this. Maybe he was still off a high or something, or maybe he was drinking, or maybe something, or maybe he was just crazy. I mean, we'll never know. But the fact that he was worried about the two animals and not two people kind of concerns me.
In 1996, 28-year-old Paljor Tawang was offered the opportunity of a lifetime. Born and raised in a valley at the foot of the Himalayas, he was chosen to lead the first ever Indian ascent of the north base of the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest. He had left school after the 10th grade and joined the highly competitive and prestigious Indo-Tibetan Border Police. Created in 1962 in response to their domineering neighbor, China, the Border Police specialized in high-altitude landscapes. They had to, given that the boundary between India and China ran through the very rugged Himalayan mountain range. 12 years after joining the Border Police, Paljor was an expert climber and very well liked by his peers, making him an obvious candidate for one of the Border Police's most ambitious missions to date. While Paljor's mother was full of pride for her son's work and accomplishments, he didn't think she would be very supportive if she knew how dangerous the mission he was going on was. And so he told her he was climbing a different mountain, although she would find out through friends where he was actually going, and she would plead with him not to go, but Paljor was not about to change his mind. He was excited and he was confident. In May of that year, Paljor said bye to his family, and he and the other hikers set out on their journey. At first, it went extremely well. The weather was perfect, and the men seemed to be having an excellent time. But their luck would not hold. The team's final assault on the north face of Mount Everest was marked by mistakes, bad decisions, and very bad weather. According to the official report on the ascent, those problems started on the morning of May 10th when Paljor and the other three climbers woke up late. Instead of leaving base camp at 3:30 a.m. like they were planning to, they didn't leave until 8 a.m., so 4.5 hours late. Making matters worse, the weather continued to deteriorate, with a blizzard moving in, creating near zero visibility. But even under the best of circumstances, Mount Everest is still a force of nature. The summit may be covered in colorful ropes and flags and climbers with their high-tech, shiny, beautiful gear, accompanied by a small army of Sherpas, but the outward appearance of commercialization is deceptive. Since 1924, at least 300 people have died on Mount Everest.
And their bodies
the
are still
death to
there.
summit ratio is a staggering 4%. The extremely high altitude, Everest reaches 5.5 miles into the sky, not only makes physical exertion extremely difficult, it affects your judgment and decision making, and not in a good way. Climbers and scientists have a name for the final half mile of Mount Everest. It's called the death zone because literally, while you're up there, you're dying. Oxygen is so limited up there that your cells just begin to die, and extremely fit people will have heart attacks and strokes and experience debilitating altitude sickness.
How is this fun for people? Do you hear this? The death zone. Your cells, heart, and the difficulty breathing and death. And people like, I still want to be the person to climb it. You know, but God bless the people that actually made it to the top of that thing. But majority of these people, maybe 15, 20 people in this photo, are probably not going to make it. It's going to be hypothermia, or they're going to die from exhaustion or difficulty breathing, and they're just going to leave their body there. I think one of the bodies are still up there, and they use it as a marker, let you know how close are you getting up the mountain. That's too extreme for me, man. Like, there's no back out plan. There's no escape plan. Like, if you get up there, there is no going back unless you know how to get back on your own. You're going to die up there, or you're going to make it to the top and wait for it to come back down. What makes matters even worse, they started late. You never want to start late on stuff like this, especially when it comes to weather. If you say 0630, then it's 0630, not 1030, not 1130, man. If we're not taking off by the time that we mentioned, I'm not going up the mountain, bro.
The conditions are so severe that people have died from exhaustion just standing in line waiting to reach the summit. But one of the biggest killers in the death zone is something called summit fever. When you get to that point in the climb, you are so close to reaching your goal. People will disregard safety and keep going on when really they should turn around and go back. Paljor and his 3 teammates were given strict orders to turn around at 3 p.m. if they had not reached the summit yet. But because of their late start, when 3 p.m. rolled around, they were not at the summit, they were in the death zone. One of the climbers who was with Paljor was the commander. And so at 3 p.m., when they were supposed to stop and turn around, he was at the very back of the climbing stack. And so he stopped and he yelled up to Paljor and the others and tried to get them to stop too so they could go back down, but either they didn't hear him or they just ignored him. Already suffering from frostbite and totally exhausted, he could not go any farther, so he grabbed his radio and he tried to hail them to tell them to stop and come back, but they didn't pick up their radio. And so the commander, after waiting for a few minutes, knew he had to go back down.
Yeah, there you go.
And began the descent.
The brain.
About 30 minutes later, the commander's radio crackled on again, and it was Paljor and the others. And they were informing him that they were going to make a push for the summit. They were about an hour away. And the commander said, "Stop, turn around, I'm ordering you to come back down. The weather is only getting worse." But whether they were suffering from summit fever or overconfidence, we don't know. But regardless, they refused. Frustrated and terrified for the other climbers, the commander just continued down the mountain. But 2.5 hours later, his radio crackled again, and this time it was Paljor and the others saying they had made it. They were standing on the summit of Mount Everest. The men had not just set a record for India, they had brought immeasurable honor to their country. The news sparked a huge celebration down in the base camp and also in the city of Leh, which is where the border police were located. But the party atmosphere would not last long. Shortly after the victory call, the weather turned from bad to horrible. What would later be known as the blizzard of 1996 had arrived in full fury, and by midnight that night, no one had heard from Paljol or the other 2 people he was with. And just a couple of days later, rescue climbers would confirm all 3 men had died. In the years following Paljol's death on the north base of Mount Everest, this hopeful and proud young Indian has become a sort of gruesome celebrity and landmark for the thousands of climbers that make it up into the death zone. Except now he's widely known on the internet and amongst people who are passionate about climbing the world's highest peaks, not as Paljor, one of the first Indians to climb the north base of Mount Everest, but as Green Boots, which is a reference to the bright neon green boots he was wearing when he died. For more than 20 years, he's laid near the top of Mount Everest in a small limestone cave, wearing an orange parka and blue pants, and he's curled on his side with his arms wrapped around him like he's trying to keep himself warm. Since his death, anyone climbing the north face when the snow cover is light would literally have to step over his body to get to the top. But Paljor is not the only dead body on Mount Everest. There are over 200 other dead climbers littering the slopes of the world's highest peak. It's just too dangerous and too expensive to try to get them down, and so they stay wherever they died. Which means if you climb Mount Everest, you will literally be climbing over dead bodies on your way to the summit. But of all the bodies on Mount Everest, the most famous by far is Paljor. Here is an image of Paljor, aka Green Boots.
That's crazy. Man, that's crazy, bro. I'm trying to tell you guys. I'll tell you guys. Didn't I tell you? I didn't know it was him. I didn't know it was an Indian dude that they're using as a marker, but that's the guy I was referring to. I thought it was yellow boots, but he said green boots. But yeah, man, whether you know it or not, you could be stepping right over one. You could be next to one. You just don't know, man. They're stuck up there. As I'm talking to you, as I'm making this video, he's still up there right now. After 20 years, that man is still up there amongst others, but he's the only one right there. Earlier, I was going to say, when play stupid game, win stupid prizes, but at the end of the day, he set his heart out to do something and he did it. Whether he died doing it, whether he made it, whether he didn't make it, you know what I'm saying? He made it up there. His country knew he made it up there. He made his country proud and he set a record. And I think he wouldn't have wanted to have it any other way. This video is by Mrballen, so if you guys haven't already, be sure you swoop down to the description box. Go on a link, go watch the video in entirety while me pausing and stopping and talking through the whole thing. Thank you guys so much, man. I greatly appreciate it. This post was a little bit late because I was out doing stuff and whatnot. And it was just a lot cleaning my room. So hope you guys enjoy, man. Thank you guys so much for the support. Keep supporting and the videos will keep coming. If you're new to the channel, my name is Reprisalzems and welcome to the Crow's Nest. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next. Let me know down in the comment section which video you thought was the most disturbing.